that's why they would agree to it, or why they would want these difficulties, because we're all uh, on this path back to God. In order to get there, we need to freely be loving, kind, compassionate, honest people. And the sooner we get there, the sooner we can get this messy earth stuff behind us.
Today, I'd like to welcome Aaron Green to the show. Aaron, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for giving me the chance to talk to you about near-death experiences and about mine in particular.
Yes, I've had a recent fascination with near death experiences as well as pre birth memories. And what I love about your story is that there's a little bit of both. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand it over to you if you would like to start wherever you want to start in your journey and tell us about your experience.
All right. Well, let me give just a little background about myself. My name is Aaron Thomas Green. I was born in Durham, North Carolina in 1975. And when I was two, my parents moved to Chesapeake, Virginia. And, I grew up in a suburban neighborhood, and I would hang out with other friends, and we would run around the neighborhood a lot, before computers and cell phones and all that. And one day I was in a neighbor's backyard, and I had a breathing difficulty, and no matter what I did, I couldn't breathe. And so I started to walk away, and that triggered a release of my soul. And my soul left my body, and I had a lot of the same experiences that other near-death experience people talk about. I had the life review, where my life fully replayed all those 6 short years in extreme detail. But it wasn't just me reliving those experiences. I also I could literally feel what my parents felt, being, the impact I had on them. Like, I could literally feel that, and feel how I'd impacted them. And I also saw a light in the distance that I knew was really important, but I didn't go to it. And then, my near death experience, I was just floating next to my body for what I guess was about 30 seconds of Earth time. But, in that kind of realm, time is just completely different. It doesn't correlate one to one like what we're used to. There's something fundamentally different about it. And anyway, I would I would have questions as I floated there, and answers would come to me, and most of these answers were in the form of, I was re-experiencing something that I had experienced prior to being born. And so uh, it's like I relived that entire spiritual experience that I had before I was born. And so I would have a lot of questions, and like a lot of answers would come to me, and they were very detailed, and pretty amazing, some of the insights that we can gather from those. 30 seconds on Earth might not sound like much, but here in this timeless realm or zone or whatever I was in, it was pretty significant, all the different parts that I remembered. And then after after roughly 30 seconds, this angel or being of light, or soul, I'm not even sure what it was, but basically it sent me back to my body. I was instructed that I shouldn't have left my body, essentially. I guess the breathing trouble I had shouldn't have been enough to trigger my soul to release. I kind of felt like maybe I'd misbehaved spiritually, kind of like I bent some rules a little bit that I wasn't supposed to. And so I went back to my body, and I went home and tried to explain it to my mom, but I was, of course, completely unable. And I would think about that experience like daily. And then after maybe I don't know, 6 months or so, these guides that I had worked with planning my life, they essentially communicated with me, and told me that uh, they needed to hide this experience from me. Like, it was interfering with my ability to live life the way we're supposed to live life. We're intended. Um, I've heard it called a veil, uh, basically we forget, but when we come into these bodies, we forget all this stuff that happened before. And by remembering that stuff and knowing certain things, it prevented me from living life the way that it's meant to be lived. And it also would have prevented me from gaining faith. So anyway, I agreed to have my memories hidden. And then when I was about 35, um, I was reading a newspaper, or, I'm sorry, a magazine article about Eben Alexander. He's a guy who had a near-death experience, and essentially, it triggered for me a recall of all those memories that I had that had been hidden from me back when I was 6. And I've spent the last 10 or 12 years trying to put these pieces together and understand my experience and understand other people's experience, and put it all together and try to figure out why are we on this planet, what's going on, what's important in life, how should I live knowing this information. So that's my experience in a nutshell. I guess there's a couple pieces that I think are kind of important because um, if you study near death experiences, there's all kinds of people saying, uh, the way I view it is everyone's got like one piece of the puzzle, and so I'd just like to share my couple puzzle pieces that I haven't heard so much from other people, like that life review that I had. A lot of people describe that, and I think they do a better job than I do. People who were older when they had that experience, they have more to say than I did because I was only 6 years old.
Yeah, that was actually one of my biggest curiosities that you had just kind of alluded to was when you were experiencing the other side. So when your consciousness had left your body, being 6 years old, you had mentioned that you had asked questions.
Right.
Were those questions of the consciousness level that you have now, like an adult consciousness, or was it the consciousness of a 6 year old?
Right. No, it's kind of like waking up from a dream, only this life is the dream. And as I was waking up in this new reality, I was definitely more intelligent. I could comprehend way more than I could as a 6-year-old. I was still me, but I was like an expanded, mentally much better version of me. Um, it was a lot better than being in this body. It was pretty nice, and I could really comprehend things that I couldn't as a 6-year-old, and understand connections way better. So I guess I'd say, even though I was still me, I was like a better version of me.
Yeah.
Um,
And is that why so my other curiosity was, how did you handle this information coming back to Earth and being 6 years old,
right.
which it sounds like your guides were like, yeah, that's kind of maybe too much for you. So we're going to erase
Yeah.
your memory for a little while. What was that like before your memory was erased?
Well, it was pretty confusing as a 6-year-old. My worldview wasn't fully developed. I, uh, there's a lot of things I didn't understand, and I'd been to church growing up as a kid, but a lot of the stuff they talked about in church didn't really correspond or equate to what I had learned during my experience. And so I guess overall I was kind of confused by it all. But then as an adult, getting these memories back, I think I was able to, I had a more fully developed worldview. I understood a lot of things better. I think I was able to piece it all together a lot better as an adult than I could as a 6-year-old.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I have a lot more questions about
Okay.
your remembering as you moved into adulthood and they came back to you. But I know you were about to talk about your life review and some of the questions you asked. So I want you to continue with that before we talk about some other things later.
Right. So one of the first questions I had was, what am I? I didn't understand because it was immediately obvious that me, who I am was different than this physical body. That was just completely obvious when I was outside of my body looking at it. And I wanted to know what am I? And I could see myself kind of like from the outside, and I was in that state, I existed like as a round ball of consciousness with a faint light coming from within. As a kid, it reminded me of an egg. Uh, it was round and translucent, and there was more details inside this round bulb that I didn't understand, and I couldn't really explain. Um, but just a round ball of consciousness with a faint light coming from within is the nearest I could explain that. Um, and then the other question I had was, why am I here on this planet? Like, how did I get here?
Mhm.
And I guess the way I see it is I got to see where we all come from spiritually before we come to this earth. I had existed as as a soul, this round ball of light with a whole bunch of other souls, maybe several thousand. I'm not sure, and we all existed together, and we were very happy. But we were like simple or ignorant. We didn't have any, like, I don't remember anything before that. Um, and we could have just existed like that forever, and we were, happy and safe. But it's kind of like we were so happy or I'm sorry, so safe that we never had any need to challenge ourselves and grow or change. And God essentially, lifted me out of this sea of souls and um, basically explained what was going to happen. And now, living this life, I understand it a lot better. Basically, we were created very simple, but with free will. God couldn't. God could have created us, complicated and sophisticated and intelligent, but it would kind of like violate our free will. And free will is extremely important. It's like the whole core reason for why we were created in the first place. And so, in order to do this right, God had to create us simple, and then we would grow through our experiences and, living a life like this, and we could grow into the kind of souls that we were going to need to be. And by sending us to a place like Earth, where it's really, difficult, way more difficult than we existed as a soul before we were born, we could very quickly learn and grow in a way that would take forever uh, in a realm of perfection without these challenges and struggles that we face daily. So it's like um, God is loving, kind, compassionate, honest, caring. All these good adjectives you could think of. That's what God is. And in order for us to really appreciate and enjoy everything that God has in store for us, we need to, of our own free will, without being forced or coerced, we need to develop in ourselves those same traits, honesty, compassion, kindness. And this realm, this physical reality we're living in, it slowly gets us to accept those things, of our own free will. And when we finally get to the point where we're honest, compassionate, kind people, and we're all going to get there eventually, then we're ready to move on to the next phase of our existence, which is significantly better than this. And God kind of explained all this to me before I came to this realm or this physical reality. And God asked me if I was sure I was willing to go through this. God wasn't going to force me. I had to accept it, or I needed to accept it in order for it to happen. Um, and so that's how I ended up here on Earth. Um, but to me, that's a critical part that I haven't heard other people say is the importance of our free will. How we were created simple with free will, and we need to grow ourselves through our own efforts, our own actions, our own decisions into more loving, kind, compassionate, honest people. And that this whole Earth system is designed to encourage that uh, by essentially giving us the consequences of our own actions and own decisions. It's like it's all twisted together so that if we hurt somebody else, we're actually, it's like we're hurting ourselves. And if we help somebody else, it's actually like we're helping ourselves. And through an iterative process, we eventually learn, hey, we need to be good to other people and honest and kind and compassionate and all these things. And it's like God had considered this in detail, um, and down to like the smallest detail. Like God really put a lot of thought into this whole process, and God was extremely confident that this was a good way to like this was a good idea, a good plan. Um, so anyway, I think that is a piece that I haven't heard in other near death experiences. That one part of it.
Yeah. I So I have interviewed and listened to a lot of near-death experiencers, as well as others who have remembered their pre-birth experience. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I love about your story is that it really marries the two. So I have a couple of questions for you around all of this because it's so fascinating to me. Now, when you were having your near-death experience, you had asked, what am I? Why am I here? And
Right.
then you had the memory of God showing you and telling
Yeah.
you why you're here. Got it. Okay. And so you had mentioned how the guides um, kind of took away your memory. And I'm curious if that was also as to not mess with your free will. Like if you were six
Right.
years old and you had all this knowledge and you understood all of this, I imagine life would have been really hard for you going through those next 20 years or so, or 30 years.
Right. Yeah. Well, one thing was very was key when these guides came to me when I was 6 and basically communicated with me and said, "Hey, we need to hide your memories." They needed my permission. They couldn't just hide my memories. Like I needed to agree to it in order for them to be hidden. But they were confident that this was important and necessary uh, for my for my spiritual growth and in order to live life as it was intended. But one of the main things that they said was that those memories would interfere with my ability to develop faith. Like if we came here to Earth and knowing everything that there is to know about God, we could never develop faith. And there's something really important about being here in this confusing world and still having faith in God. There's like a power to that that has a very powerful spiritual result. And so that was one of the key reasons why they wanted to hide these memories. I don't know what it would have been like to go through life growing up from 6 to 35, knowing what I knew. I don't know what that would be like, but apparently, um, God's so confident in this plan that being in this confusing realm is worth it. That you know, the guides were pretty adamant that I should give up that knowledge, and I agreed with them. I knew that they were looking out for my best interests.
Yeah. So you did have some faith at that moment, which I
Well,
find really interesting because what I'm hearing is the perfection in the design
right,
of this time space reality, as well as a common theme that I've heard before as well, that we actually have to agree to being veiled. Like
right,
it's our choice. We're saying yes, just like you said yes to the life that you were signing up for, which I would love to hear more about that process if you have more
right.
memories of that. But you also said yes to being veiled again later on.
Yeah. I think it's just a almost like a requirement of coming to this planet is that we need to agree, give up our pre-birth memories. And it's part of what makes this whole system work. It allows us to operate with a greater degree of free will because we're not restrained by fear of what's to come if we hurt other people, for example, or we're not after some kind of reward in the afterlife because we can't understand or know what that would be. We're just freely going through life, making our decisions however we think is best. Um, and that's all part of the plan. That's the amazing part is it's not some accident or unintended consequence. Like this is all planned out in detail. And God, what I saw was God is very confident that this is the best plan imaginable. Like there's no mistakes made, nothing was looked over or forgotten. Um, yeah, but you also mentioned planning out my pre-life memories. So I'll get into that a little more. Um, so one of the questions I had was, well, how did I become Aaron Green? Like, why am I living this life right now? And this memory came back to me, and I'd been working with some guides. Like, I think we're kind of ignorant or confused, and these guides help us um, plan out the life we're going to lead. There's kind of a thought that it's real random. Like, some people are lucky to be born in this situation and or unlucky to be born in that situation. But what I saw was that's not the case at all. Like, this is all planned out, and there's been a lot of thought put into this. And for me, the guides had a life plan for me, or a person that I could become, and that the first person that they had would have been like a very angry person, and I didn't. It didn't work with me. I just completely rejected the plan, and the guides totally respected that I didn't want this first life that they had planned for me. So we looked at other possibilities, and there just happened to be a family nearby that looked like a good fit, and so the guides and I looked at what was available if I became a child to these parents, and we planned out pretty much everything, and the whole process is kind of unique. Like, at every stage of this planning process, it was my decision. They weren't forcing me. They were more like guiding me and saying, hey, well, if you do this, there's going to be this negative consequence, or if you do this, there'll be this positive consequence. They were really guiding me through this whole process. But it's kind of funny. I think I initially wanted to be a redheaded girl because those genes were available to these parents. um, I felt like being a girl, I would be less likely to hurt other people because I knew men were a little bit more violent, maybe more prone to get in fights and hurt other people. And I didn't want that at all, because I knew spiritually how bad that is if we hurt other people. Um, but the genes weren't quite right with the parents and the redheaded girl, and it just wouldn't work quite right. I would have been like socially awkward and a little bit odd, and I never would have gotten married. And that was kind of like a deal breaker for me, because I really wanted to get married and have children, because that helps us with our spiritual development also. And so anyway, then the guides and I looked at the boys available to these parents, and I wanted to be a redheaded boy. I had seen how rare redheads were, and I thought that was really cool. Like, I thought that was really neat to have a rare hair color or rare look. That really appealed to me, but it just didn't work out with these parents and those genes. Um, like, there was other factors that weren't as good, that would have made the whole experience not as good for me. Um, but we then looked at brown haired boys, and there was oodles and oodles of possibilities available for brown haired boys for this couple. And so if I picked brown hair, I could pretty much pick anything else I wanted, because there's so many genes available to them. But I think this is kind of funny. At first, I wanted to be really, really good looking, like the best looking guy on the planet, like uh, who's a Superman guy, Henry Cavill, just really good looking. That's what I wanted. And the guides basically, that DNA was available to these parents, but the guides were pretty much like, okay, well, here's the negative consequence. And essentially, where I am in my spiritual development, living a life as one of the best looking guys on the planet, women would have treated me differently. There would be certain opportunities available to me that aren't available as a more average looking guy. And essentially, I would have become not very, but too promiscuous. I would have been with too many women, essentially. And there's a downside to that. There's a spiritual downside to being like that. And that was all self-evident there as a soul looking at what life is going to be like. And so seeing that downside, that was just a deal breaker. That was just unacceptable to me. So I backed the attractiveness down to what I thought was attractive, but not like the best looking guy on the planet. Still attractive, but not gorgeous or anything. And I know you might be saying, hey, well, this old guy, he doesn't look good at all. But remember, I'm 48, and I look better as a younger guy, and my looks as a young man match up with what I remember picking as a soul before coming into this life. But anyway, we picked the appropriate level of attractiveness, and it's like, okay, that looks good, or looks right. And then we looked at the intelligence, and I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet, like Einstein kind of intelligence, or even smarter, just ridiculously intelligent. And I could have picked that because that was available to these parents. But there was significant spiritual downside. And again, the guides pointed out, hey, here's the downside of that. And I would have been extremely arrogant. I would have really looked down on other people for not being, as intelligent as me. I would have thought everybody was stupid. And I would have been kind of a jerk, and I would have been an atheist. And that was really the deal breaker for me, was that there's something about being that intelligent that would have led me into become an atheist. And so I rejected that super intelligent, and instead did just like with the looks and backed it down to someone intelligent, a smart person, but not like nothing extraordinary or off the charts. And anyway, we picked the right level of intelligence, and it looked good. So it was like, okay, we'll go with that. And likewise, we looked at other traits, like down to the most intimate detail. Like I knew what I was getting into with this body. I knew that the kind of clothes I would wear. We looked at everything, and we also looked at the parents that I was going to be born to, and I took a close look at what they were like, what kind of parents they would be, where they were on their spiritual journey. Like I really knew what I was getting myself into. I knew, what my brother was going to be like as a brother, how that would affect me growing up. My father, growing up, he was very worried about money, and he was kind of angry at times when he, didn't really have a good reason to. And the guides, that like his anger was significant enough that the guides made me, they pointed it out, and I needed to agree to it. Sometimes he would spank us and belt us when we didn't really deserve it. Nothing atrocious, not horrible, but more than reasonable. But anyway, I needed to agree to that. But I had a really, really good idea of what I was getting myself into. It was not forced on me. It wasn't random. It was all guided by guides, but it was my decision. And anyway, when we picked the right body, then they had stuff planned for my life. I was going to get my nose broken as a teenager, and I needed to agree to that. I dislocated my shoulder when I was a teenager, and I needed to agree to that. And then I broke and dislocated this one, and I needed to agree to that. And I needed to agree to all these difficulties that I was going to face in life. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to face them. It was like I had to agree to them. And so I think that means for most people that they've agreed to the difficulties they're facing in life too. And you might say, well, why on earth would you agree to these difficulties? But like getting my nose broken, that was important in my spiritual development. That would help me to become the kind of spirit that I want it to be. It would, in the short term, it was very difficult, but in the long term, it would help me become more loving and kind and compassionate. And I remember for that particular experience, as a teenager, this guy, we got in a fight, and he broke my nose. And, I could have held on to resentment about that. But I remember, as a teenager, I forgave him. Like, I let go of it. And I now realize how important that is spiritually, that we forgive other people when something like that happens. But when I was living life as, a 12-year-old, I had no idea about any of that stuff. But in the pre-life planning process, it was all perfectly obvious that while it would be difficult in the short term, it had a long and lasting spiritual benefit. It's kind of like ripping a band-aid off, I guess. If you do it real fast, yeah, it hurts, but you get it over with. A lot of parts of life are like that. We can get these things over with very quickly, but then we have a lasting spiritual benefit that significantly outweighs the troubles we're going through. And anyway, but I agreed to all these different aspects of life, and there was aspects with different people that were planned out. Some of the situations in my life, like some of that was like I remember planning it and agreeing to it, and other people agreeing to certain hardships, but all of it was kind of like woven together for the benefit of everybody. And anyway, I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, is that we're active participants in planning our bodies and our lives and all this stuff, and it's all planned out to benefit everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all that detail. It is one of the reasons that when I listen to people who have had pre-birth memories or are sharing their near-death experience, I just always get this sense that I could almost see my soul sitting there with my guides, mapping out, okay, it's going to be hard, but you're
Right.
agreeing to this hard. And so thank you so much for that, because I really feel like if we all had that view, at least a little bit of knowing that we said yes, right? We
Right.
said yes to our nose getting broken, or our parent, having an angry parent, like
Right.
we might actually just navigate this world a little bit differently. So
Yeah.
I appreciate all of that detail, and anything else you want to share around these memories.
Well, I think about people who have really, really difficult things they're going through in life. And they'll tell you, I would never agree to this. Okay. And I can understand, because they're going through some really tough stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't want to minimize that in any way. But the question I would say, well, how much benefit would you need to agree to go through this horrible stuff you're going through? And they would say, well, it would have to be incredibly enormous. And, you know, the way I see it is, the benefit to these people was so extreme, so unbelievably amazing, that they would agree to this really, really difficult stuff they're going through in life. And you can only imagine how difficult some of this stuff is people are going through. But then if you realize that the spiritual benefit that they're gonna gain from that is even, you know 10 times greater, 100 times greater than the pain and suffering they're going through, it kind of puts it into perspective. um, let's see some of the details about planning this life. Like, I witnessed people and souls agreeing to certain screwed up scenarios that would end up resulting in more spiritual growth for them. I watched people ask for additional difficulty, additional hardships, stuff that as a person I'm sure they would never say that they agreed to it, but as a soul, watching this pre-life planning process, I witnessed people agreeing to stuff that was pretty screwed up and messed up, but it it would end up growing them spiritually and giving them greater happiness, greater wisdom, greater intelligence. It would allow them to move further up this ladder of progression that we're all on. And that's why they would agree to it, or why they would want these difficulties, because we're all uh, on this path back to God. In order to get there, we need to freely be loving, kind, compassionate, honest people. And the sooner we get there, the sooner we can get this messy earth stuff behind us. And by going through some of these difficulties, we can get there a little faster.
Yeah. I like how you said that. If we can freely be loving and
Right.
freely be honest, and something that I've heard you say a couple of times already is that you witnessed souls picking out difficult scenarios. And every time
Right.
you say that, you talk about a spiritual benefit
Right.
that is a result of that challenge. And when you mentioned that when you were choosing your avatar, you were at first you wanted to be the most attractive, and then you wanted to be
Right.
the most intelligent. It's like such a reality check to when we ask, why can't I be smarter, or why
Right.
couldn't I be, different than what I am now, because we wanted this specific experience. I'm wondering if you have any more insight to what these spiritual benefits or these spiritual growths are. Did you get any more clarity on that?
Well, the way I see it, we started out simple and basic, and inevitably we're going to get to where we're intelligent and wise and loving, compassionate, honest, all these things. And by going through earthly this process, we we become closer to that end goal. And so some of these difficult choices we have to make in life, like just having a baby that screams and cries all the time and you change the poopy diaper, like you're expressing love for this baby, even though it's a difficult scenario. And that it's kind of like a I don't know, trial by fire, or um, when they make like swords that they hit it with a hammer and they put it in the fire. It's kind of like that for our soul. We're actually being strengthened, and we're becoming more godlike by the decisions we make and by going through this earthly process. And the the more difficult the scenario or situation we're going through in life, the more growth we can get out of it. Um, you know, you can pick a really easy life with no problem, or not no problems, but with minimal problems, and that's your choice. But you won't get this significant spiritual benefit that some people are going to get because they've faced some difficult situations. And you know, I think souls reach a point where they kind of want to speed their development and get to the end goal a little faster, so they choose some difficult scenarios in life. And this end goal that we're all going to achieve it someday, the happiness that I observed was just off the charts. These souls, when they're done with this process and they're back with God, and they've grown into a loving, kind, compassionate person or soul, and they're surrounded by other souls that are just like them, loving, kind, compassionate, beautiful. The happiness is just off the charts. And so in order to get there, we're willing to go through some really hard stuff, so that we can enjoy that happiness too.
Yeah. I always giggle because it just blows my mind how we can, be in this time space reality and feel such enormous suffering and density.
Right.
And, kind of like not a joke, but the running joke is the whole time like we chose it. We signed up for it.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you mentioned that when you were in the sea of souls, what I heard you say that stood out the most to me was that you felt safe there,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
could have stayed in that, safety. However, the experiences that were available by choosing this reality were actually more appealing than that safety.
Well, it wasn't that the experience of this reality appealed to me. It was more that the growth I could obtain and the ability to help other people, like that's something that a lot of people forget. You might be going through something difficult, and your whole reason is you're actually doing this to help another soul. Like
Yeah.
it might be that the primary beneficiary is someone other than yourself. I think people miss that. We're all kind of in this together. And my mindset planning this life out was like, well, if I could go through this little difficulty and it can help someone else much more, then it's a worthwhile exchange. I'm willing to do that to help other souls around me, and I know that other souls are making similar decisions. But coming here to Earth, that wasn't that wasn't what anybody's looking for. The reason the souls come here is because they could either help another soul or help themselves and increase their happiness by going through this difficult process. But there's a much better reality out there than this earthly life. This is just a short term. I don't.
Right.
I think it's like a kindergarten or a boot camp. Just this
Right.
difficult thing to go through.
Yeah, like a little blip in time.
Right. Right.
Notice that I'm really curious because you had this experience, well, before you chose to come to Earth. And then when you were 6, you stopped breathing. So you
Right.
had a memory. And then your memory was taken away by your guides. So,
Right.
my curiosity is, what were those years like for you? Were challenges hard for you during that time? And then once you started to remember, was it like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Cool. Or was there a process to having those
Right.
memories be returned?
Uh, I would estimate that like half of the memories kind of they like came back right away, and then half of them like pieces would come as time went on. I would remember more stuff that I hadn't thought about. Um, but then also I kind of needed to piece it all together and understand it, and that all took a while. And I would say it took years for me to really come to terms with what I had experienced and what it all meant. And so it took me a couple years uh, to really piece it together and understand it. And it also helped to hear other people's experiences and understand what they had been through, and to realize that lots of other people have had similar experiences, and there might be a piece that like the life review, for example, mine was, I think, kind of short, but then I can hear someone else's who they uh they go into more detail, and so it makes it uh a little easier for me to understand what I went through and what some of that stuff was and what it meant. um yeah.
So when you were 6, you had said that you tried to tell your mom and that she just couldn't hear it. Was there an experience when you were older that you told your family, and how did they accept it or not accept it?
Yeah. This kind of experience is a little outside of most people's sense of normal or usual. They're not used to hearing this, and that includes my family members. So some of them were very accepting and very supportive and curious about my experience, and then others, not so much. They either didn't know how to didn't know what I was saying. Is Aaron going crazy here? What? So there's a wide range in there, um, and I understand that some of what I'm saying and what some of the other people are saying is a little outside of the normal day-to-day conversation, and it's hard for some people to really accept what we're saying, or maybe they're not ready, and that's fine. I certainly respect that if someone doesn't isn't able for whatever reason to hear what I have to say. That I think that's fine.
Yeah, I adopt that view as well. Now, I'm curious about your life now that these memories have come back. Do you do you still feel veiled, or do you get homesick? Like, what is that like for you?
Right. I guess personally and selfishly, uh, I'd love to get back to that reality, because I know it's so much better than this. But then I have to say, well, wait a minute. I'm here. I know this stuff about why we're really here, what's really going on. I can use that not just for my benefit, but to help those around me. If I can figure out how to be more loving and kind and help other people and live that life that we all know that people should, then I can really, I'm hoping, make an impact on this world and make it just a little bit better. Just if I'm able to help anyone in some meaningful way or even some small way, I think that that's significant, and that can help humanity in this world move, a little bit faster to the next step. The way I see it, we're all inevitably going to get there. We're going to become more godlike, more loving, and if I can do something loving for another person, it just helps the whole process move forward. Um, Other people have mentioned the ripple effect. You know what I'm talking about? Like if I help one person, like that then changes how their life's going to be, and they're going to be more likely to help the next person, and it ripples around the whole globe to where this one little act of helpfulness could impact the whole world. well, if I can spend the next 30 years or however much time I have on this planet trying to help as many people as I can, through small acts of love, or big or medium or whatever, any way that I can, then I'm hopeful that'll help humanity move a little faster towards this inevitable goal of everybody being more loving and kind to each other.
Thank you so much for all of that. I've never had my own near-death experience or memories like that, but one of the reasons that when I hear you guys speak about your experiences, it lands so congruent with so many texts and different things that I've studied. And
Okay.
everything comes back to things you've said, right? Forgiveness, the
Right.
ripple effect. Every time we extend love, it heals and it has a
Yeah.
ripple effect. And so I noticed just being so grateful for you and all the many others who are sharing your experiences because it just feels true. Just
Good.
feels true.
Good. Yeah. And I think, like, if you look into what Jesus said and what Jesus taught, to me it lines up perfectly with what near death experiencers are saying. I don't think it's any coincidence. One of Jesus' disciples said, "Hey, well, what's most important?" And
Yeah.
Jesus, there's a lot of things he didn't say. What he said was, "Love God and love your neighbor." And I think if you listen closely to what near death experiencers have to say, they're saying the same thing.
Mm,
Um, you know, love everyone. And I think if we could just if we could just try to do that, this would be such a easier world to live in.
right. Right. I just had this little picture of what you said before, how we're really simple and we just complicate it, right? It's so
Yeah.
easy. It just be loving,
Right. Right.
but we don't see it so easy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, all this complicated stuff people come up with, like, to live a good life. I think a kindergartner could easily understand it. It's the same
Right.
principles that they teach in kindergarten, only that's the important stuff. It's none of this complicated religious tradition or special clothing, or I don't know, 1,000-step religious process. No, no, it's real easy. We need to love other people through kindness, compassion, honesty. All these wonderful things. Like, that's what's important. That's where we can really make things better for ourselves and for other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been so much fun. I do have a couple of questions that I ask all my guests, but before
Okay.
we go there, is there anything else that we didn't cover today that you would like to share?
Uh, no, I don't think so. I think I covered my big parts.
We covered a lot in this. It was a great, great conversation. The first question that I ask all my guests is, how would you define God?
Um, I guess to me, God is everything. Um, God is loving, kind, compassionate, honest, caring, um, extremely gentle with us, and uh, all knowing and wise and intelligent. And all of us, like everything in this universe, is just like a little piece of God. And all of our souls, we're like just a little piece of God too. Um, so that's how I view God. It is everything, but in the perfected sense, and in a wonderful, um, terrific sense. To me, that's God, and we're like a little tiny piece of that that's going through this short difficulty, um, because it serves a purpose.
Awesome. Thank you. The second question is, what would you say is the purpose of life?
I think we're here to learn and to grow, and the purpose of life is to allow us increased spiritual knowledge and understanding, and to eventually allow us increased happiness. Um, I view the purpose of this life similar to the purpose of boot camp or kindergarten. Like this is like basic training, the basic knowledge that we need to have to move forward spiritually. We can obtain that here on earth, and that basic knowledge is essentially the same stuff you learn in kindergarten, just to be nice to each other and to treat other people well. So I think that's the purpose.
Thank you. And the final question is, if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now and offer it to a younger version of yourself, what would
Right.
that one piece of wisdom be?
uh, well, that's tough, because I know that so many of the mistakes I made, like they have helped me to grow and become a better person, even though, I wish I kind of wish I could avoid them. But I guess the main thing I would tell younger me is just to be good to other people, and not to do things that I knew were wrong, or that would hurt anyone else. That I should take advantage of any opportunity I ever have to help somebody else, while rejecting any opportunity I have to do something that would hurt somebody else. That's probably the advice I'd give a younger me.
I for sure like it. I think that should be written all over
Right.
the world,
Yeah.
right? That's great advice. How do people find you, keep up with you, get in touch with you?
Okay. I'm easy to find on Facebook, Aaron Thomas Green. Um, a lot of people contact me through Facebook, or you can email me at aarongreen1975@gmail.com. People contacted me that way too. And if someone has a question or a comment, please reach out. I'd be happy to um, respond or talk to anyone. It's been kind of humbling, some of the messages I've gotten from people. Um, that they've said that they some people have said they enjoyed what I had to say in other interviews, and I really appreciate that. And it's kind of humbling to think that maybe my goal is to share my little puzzle pieces so everybody can assemble their own puzzle of what they think God and life are all about. But if I can help with that process a little bit, I'll be very happy.
Well, thank you so much. I know that hearing your story has helped me in so many ways. And so I appreciate you being here today and for sharing your memories with the world with the intention of helping anyone who may be able to receive it. So thank you again.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.